Hi, George.
The legal system is that if they want to make a donation, it's not outcomes here. That way we're not getting stage four.
Oh, yeah.
So that means it's allowed to reappraise.
About done?
Yeah, I'll give it.
Okay.
Just start in.
Waiting for you, Gavin.
Come on, Colonel, sit down.
Okay, might as well get started. I'm Roger Mann, the safety officer for March Aero Club. This is the March Aero Club safety meeting, and this is for September. Already it's September. We don't have that much left for this year. So, let's see, Bob was going around passing a card out for Get Well. We had one of our members, Gene Keel, who had a mild stroke. And I don't know how many of you knew him or not, but he had a very mild stroke. I went in the hospital and saw him, and so we're passing a card around for him. And he's out of the hospital and everything, back home. So now he just has to figure out what's going to happen with the FAA side. I would happen to be in the hospital when the doctor came in and told him he can't drive now. So I said, gee, but you can still fly an airplane, because the doctor didn't say anything about airplanes, you know. So anyhow, so if you know Gene, sign his card. Okay.
What's the other card for, Roger? There's two of them.
Yeah.
It's for another individual.
It's somebody else that Bob has got. It's like a birthday or something like that.
It's a Get Well card. It's not a birthday card.
We're
Well,
working on it.
yeah, we're working on it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we'll just start in what we got so we can get this thing over with. We got a couple of interesting things. We got the wing safety officer's going to tell us a few things about some accidents and some things like that. But right now, is there anybody here that's new? Who has not been stood up? Yeah, okay. Yeah, stood up during.
You want me to stand up, Roger?
Stand up and introduce yourself and say who you are.
Alan Shanahan, new to the club, started CAP a few months ago, decided to come out to March. Roger and Bob were talking it up, and Andrew. I started flying out of Corona in '91, and I've been instructing for about the last 14, 15 years. So I'm starting to kind of get back into doing more flying, getting away. I got more time from work now, so I decided to check out the Aero Club.
Nice Italian name.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, welcome. Okay, I think we covered everything else. Yeah, Robert, you know, you haven't been around for a while. You're just
Sure I
like,
have. You just never noticed me.
yeah, right, yeah. Robert's one of these guys that likes DC-3s and things like that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, you ought to tell your story sometime. Let's see, I think we've gotten you before, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course you would say that so you don't have to stand up. No, I remember you have done it. Anybody else that has not been introduced as a new person? I think you were the only one, I believe. I can't see anything without my glasses, so. Yeah, yeah, sure. I used to be an instructor here one time. Anyhow. And Gavin, I'm glad you're here tonight. Well, that's.
I'm glad to be here too.
Yeah. You're probably just driving by, right? And then Joshua here. Yeah, he kind of shows up once every 6 months. But he's got a good excuse because he's the base computer guy. And he's never busy. He just sits in his office twiddling his thumbs. I'm sure that he works his head off, yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on. New pilot ratings. Anybody, this includes solo. Is it your first solo? Have you got a new rating? Have you gotten all this stuff? I haven't seen several of you guys lately. Anybody here
And we
got,
had one with an instrument this month,
is it,
Rumpleton.
Yeah, Ed Rumpleton.
yeah,
That was
Ed, okay. Yeah, he got an instrument rating.
Lost the clouds right now, he's not around.
Yeah, he is, yeah. And this includes Air Force stuff too, you know, I don't know. Anybody who's gotten, good grief, nobody's done nothing at all?
I did my first tail dragger solo.
Ah, there we go, all right.
I just want to try tail draggers taxi solo.
Yeah, yeah, and you didn't spin out when you were taking off or anything like that, okay, good, that's real good. Okay, anybody got violated by the FAA? We do have that happen
We
once
ain't
in a while.
coming to it.
Okay, okay, experiences, this is where we talk about, things that you can share with the club. We promise that we won't try to pursue any action if it's something you did wrong, but yes. Yeah, Bill,
Just for a point of safety, if you're gonna be flying down at Hemet, the last couple of weeks, there's been students coming up from Gillespie Field. And I don't know what language they're speaking, but when they come up there and they get into the pattern at Hemet, they'll get into the pattern, they'll announce in English that they're coming in on the downwind for 2-3. And then they start speaking some other language, and you can't understand what they're saying.
Huh.
And there'll be 2 or 3 airplanes that are from that Aero Club down there at Gillespie. And I know that's where they're from, because I've copied down their tail numbers and found out where they were coming from. But they'll get into the pattern, and then you can't understand what they're saying. And I was coming in on final, on a long
Hang
final,
on
and
here
had
for-
one of them,
what's going on here?
announced that they were on the downwind, and then when they started talking in this other language, I didn't know where they were. And then Jim G was telling me the same thing happened to him down there, and that's where they're coming from, is Gillespie. So just be cautious if you're down there and you hear somebody speaking in a foreign language. Look out for them, because that's
Is
where
that
they're
down
at.
there where the Japanese airline people are sending over their students?
I don't know. It sounded more like Farsi or something.
Oh, come in different values.
The other thing that I wanted to share with everybody down there is about Hemet. Is the other day there was a guy in a Warbird, an F4F and an AT6, and they were flying and they were coming up from San Diego or someplace. Anyway, they weren't familiar with the field, so they, I guess on ForeFlight, they looked at the runway syllabus on their ForeFlight, and they decided that they were going to do a right-hand pattern. Everybody else was doing a left-hand pattern, so they did a right-hand pattern. They weren't paying any attention. Neither were the people in the left-hand pattern for 2-3, and they came around like this. And the F4F was on the right base, and another guy was on the left base, and they just about collided right over the numbers on the end of the runway. And the guy in the Cessna cut off like this, and there were a lot of harsh words on the radio. And the guy in the F4F went ahead and landed. The guy in the AT6 came in behind him. He was on the right base, and there was more traffic coming in. And I mean, it
You know, fight on the ground.
devolved into that.
A
Yeah,
few
after
words,
that, there
yeah.
were.
Were they speaking English on those?
Yeah, they were.
Well, they were in
Yeah.
But anyway, my point there is when you're looking at your ForeFlight or you're looking at anything down there, particularly at Hemet, it's confusing because it almost makes it seem like the pattern should be a right-hand pattern, and it's not. It's a left-hand pattern when you're coming into Hemet. There's 2 runways.
Oh, yeah.
It's not.
It's for the gliders.
There's a little bitty glider runway.
The
on-
glider, yeah.
On the north side.
That's the
of
right
2-3.
And
And that's
that's
a
the
right
right
pattern.
pattern.
But the guy, when he came around with his F4F, he was gonna land on, not 2-2, which is the glider one, he was gonna land on 2-3, and so they almost had to push that. So, just things for you to think about and be aware of.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Bill, for sharing that. That's, yeah. I tell you, I like those places down there. Of course, my unfavorite field is French Valley, because I've seen a lot of things going on at that place. But yeah, that's good to know. Good, very much, yeah. And if you have any questions, talk to Bill about it. And John here, I know you fly down there quite a bit too, yeah.
I think it's a good idea, though, to keep in mind that a lot of these small airports around here like El Monte and some of these airports, they do have these students coming in that are foreign students that fly in. I dealt with it in Santa Monica when I was flying out of there. And you have to pay attention because you don't know what language you're gonna hear across the radio. And it is kind of, it's kind of misconceiving because you don't know exactly where they're at.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
But you're gonna find it not just in Hamlet, but a lot of places around here.
Well, the biggest problem is that we found was that there's 2 or 3 of those airplanes in the air at one time in the pattern.
Exactly.
And they're
Yeah.
talking back and
Back
forth to
and
each
forth,
other,
yeah.
and you have no idea what's going on.
They're looking for a big building in Los Angeles, they're gonna take us. That's scary.
Uh,
All buildings.
Well, okay. Is there anybody else who wants to share anything like this?
I've seen the
I was only landing at Fallbrook and Ramona, so if you come to Fallbrook, don't go too fast, don't go too slow either. Most beautiful bonanza.
You say it just right, George?
Just right. Okay. Most beautiful bonanza F33. He hit his brakes as soon as he touched down, and he just peeled the wheel and tire right off the rail.
Oh, gee.
When you do that.
But that's what happened. He said I was going too fast, and he was hauling.
He knew there was a flower pot at the end, huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, old airplane, old tires, gonna come apart, right?
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Bill, this would probably be a good time to do this now.
Well, I don't know if you guys have been following the G4 incident. NTSB report came out, I believe it was 5 days ago or something. And basically it was, anybody know what the airport of? It was in Massachusetts, I think somewhere. So what happened, everybody knows, I don't know. But they took off and they tried to abort the takeoff, and then they overran the runway, killed everybody, killed the crew, killed the passenger, flight attendant. So the NTSB came out with their, what they think it is, and they think it was the gust lock on the G4. So being that I've flown the G4 for quite a few years, I was asked to communicate this, but basically it's the same thing on a G4 that it is with all these other airplanes, and it's procedure. These guys missed at least 2 things on their checklist. So what's happening is, especially in the corporate world, is that everything's a rush. Everything's gotta be done because the boss needs to get there, or the weather, or something. And we've all been there. So it's just doing things too fast. This gust lock should have been caught with just a control check, and that would have identified that there was a problem. So they tried to put the throttles forward, and the airplane is supposed to inhibit that, but it didn't inhibit it enough. So they were able to get enough airspeed to at least think that they're getting pretty much normal, and they weren't even close. So then they identified, well, this is not working. The rudders were stuck, or they made a comment about that. That was on the CBR. So they aborted, and they aborted very late. So it can happen to anybody. And we talk about these things again and again, but it just it's a good time to take note that just take your time. Do the checklist, do the procedure. You're safe with the procedure, and if you do that, you're much more likely to stay out of trouble. So that's it.
Yeah. I think the philosophy of safety is the fact that sometimes it's like going to a classroom in college, and you go to that classroom in college, and a lot of people I've known in college would go just so they could pass the test, but once they got out of college, yeah, you know, that was just all stuff to get me prepared to go out in the working world. And I think there's people that disconnect what we do here and they get out in the airplane, okay, we got that done, but that's not real life. You know, now we're in the real world and we just do this. And that's a whole nother subject in safety in itself, completely. Bill.
Right, those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Bill Alleman. I'm the flight safety officer here for March. I did ask him to talk about that. I brought it up in the other meeting out there. And I think a lot of us will think about it as like, hey, I would never try to take off with the gust locks or airplane to flight control lock. I mean, this is kind of silly. How am I going to drive a little Cessna or a T-34? It's kind of hard to steer. But the point is that these guys they had a lot of experience. They had 30,000 hours combined hours between the two of them. They've been doing this forever, and they have a history, as the NTSB says, of not doing their checklist. They got to the point they're so experienced, so comfortable with the airplane, nobody's looking over their shoulder, and they said, "That's okay, I'm good. I can get this done. I'm so good." And then when they got the warning messages, they ignored them because, hey, the airplane's still flying good. It feels good. I got an experience out there. And then when it felt that something was wrong with the airplane, the pilot comment out there, not enough power on it, he said, he still kept going. He said, well, that's good enough. I'll be able to get it airborne. We'll figure this thing out later on. We got to get going. And then when they finally decided, okay, this is not going to fly, reject, it's too late to die. So what I want you guys to emphasize, to think about is what will you guys do when you see something unusual? You know, if you're on the check ride and you start doing an approach, and you had planned to do this approach, do it with half flap, for example, and as you roll it on the final, at some point the airplane feels kind of mushy, and you figured out, oh, I don't have half flap, I forgot to put the flaps down. Well, it's good enough, the airplane's flying, the runway's there, I'm just gonna go ahead and land. Or do you say, this is not right, I'm not really stable in criteria here, let's go around and try it again. Put yourself in that situation. You know, the winds are kind of squirrely. You want to get down. It's kind of like, you know, are they close to my limit? I set some limits, but they're maybe just past the limits. Well, today it's going to be good enough. I'm going to go ahead and land here, or do I go around and go look for another runway to land? Think about these things before you go out there and fly, because as a human being, you're more likely to try to push it a little bit. If I don't have a hard limit and I can go a little bit more, then I'll push that limit. And if I'm okay there, I can go to the next one until eventually something bad happens. The other incident I want to talk about, is anybody here not familiar with what's in the news just a little while ago? An F-16 crashed into, I think it was a Cessna 150 out there by Charleston. Okay, anybody not familiar? Okay, so everybody kind of heard about this. The safety reports out there, the NTSB takes a lot longer than the Air Force to release reports. Unfortunately, I can't give you all the data from the Air Force because the Air Force reports are privileged. But I'm going to try to tell you a little bit what happens, what should be released eventually, because this is what FAA and the NTSB released to the Air Force to share. Cessna 150, I think the owner of the airplane's there with his dad, taking off at a little airfield, climbing out, squawking, not talking to anybody. They're VFR. You guys know what the rules are, like guys out there, hey, I'm VFR, I'm on controlled airspace, controlled airfield, I don't need to talk to anybody, and he's completely legal climbing out. This little airfield happens to be underneath the radar pattern for Charleston. F-16 coming in on line for our clearance, beautiful day, VFR day, and he's being vectored to a funnel. All right, and just for what I really like to emphasize, when I talk to the, especially other FBOs out there, a lot of civilian airplane or civilian GA pilots, I think a lot of you guys have military experience here, so most of you guys realize this. But does anybody here think that military aircraft have this great system? They'll see a general aviation aircraft out there, VFR, and we'll always be able to avoid them. How many people here think that F-16, the ones like we have here to do air defense and stuff like that, have TCAS? No, F-16s do not have TCAS. So even the airliners have better stuff out there. Some of you guys on maybe private airplanes will have probably better avionics equipment than some of the F-16s. So he's just being radar vectored, the VFR. The FAA controller sees traffic, but he assumes, because most of the traffic taken off the airfield, he's just going to the pattern. So he gets busy, and next thing he knows, this airplane is about 300 feet that ahead in front of the F-16. Tries to get the F-16 to turn, and then basically the F-16 guy can't see this airplane. He's looking for it, and eventually they turn and it fly right into each other. The F-16 basically cut that airplane in half, probably killed those two guys on that airplane instantaneously. F-16 just had some minor damage. Unfortunately, couldn't produce enough thrust to keep flying the airplane, and he flew for a little while and got out of the airplane, but he's fine. So, a couple different things that went wrong and all the stuff like that. As I said, issue the controller. I mean, this is kind of it's getting to the legal point. The FAA is gonna, whether the controller is really screwed up or not. But the
What were the altitude differences?
the F-16 was being vectored at 1,500 feet, so it was run down to the MVAs. I'm using IFR terms. Everybody understand MVAs here? Okay, so just pretty low altitude, 1,500 feet. Figure that general aviation airport there, 1,500 feet is probably the lowest you can get somebody over the airfield. Most GA patterns were at about 1,000 feet, so you should have at least 500 feet separation there. The airplane should be plenty good. When he saw him, it's about 1,200 feet, so about 300 foot separation, climbing out. So climbing out like this. So it's just,
How far from the airport?
I don't know. He was being vectored basically to an instrument approach to an ILS out there.
To which run that you were?
No, I don't know exactly where it's at. I mean, the CNN and all stuff like that had to tell you exactly where they were. Yeah, I got to be careful how much stuff that I talk about. I'm sorry, it's this privilege kind of stuff.
We won't remember anyways.
Yeah, it's all being recorded right here.
Yeah, that's right.
But think about one thing from your point of view when you're flying an airplane out here. What would have prevented this happening? One little thing. Talking. If that guy taking off out of the airfield had called this local it's not GCA, what do you call it, approach control departure there, asked for flight follow, hey, this is Cessna 150, blah, 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 taking off of this airfield, climbing out to the southwest, to this altitude. Bam, the controller knows right away, he knows he's got the F-16s being vectored out there, immediate separation. I mean, there's different things that could have done it, but just one little thing like that. So when I talk to those guys downtown to the airfield, that's one of the two things I really ask the general aviation pilots out there. Talk to somebody if you can, squawk if you can. And I like people to use lights. A lot of times I know your land lights are expensive, stuff like that. Those three things really, really help the separation between airplanes out there. I know you can legally fly through all kinds of airspace without finding somebody. When I went over to Flaybob and I talked to the people there, they tell me they have a couple pilots who are, what do you call it, I think dumb, when you can't talk. You can hear, but you can't talk.
Oh.
Deaf, dumb, I forget which one it is. So they fly around and it scares me to death to know that these guys are flying around in this airspace and completely legal. But I'll never hear them talk on the radio, and I'll never talk to SoCal, tell them, so give word I'm gonna be out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do have a couple people that fly the F-16s. They're in the club here. Greg Lair, he was at the last safety meeting, as a matter of fact, sitting right over there. And if you ever, I'll try to, if you can talk to them about what kind of equipment they do have in those airplanes. And it's not really, you would think in such a high-performing airplane that they would have all kinds of fancy stuff in it, but they don't necessarily have as much. I mean, the C-17 has got...
And that's what the general aviation pilot assumes.
Yeah.
They assume out there, if you're a military guy, you fly the F-15s out there, 500 knots on the ground, whatever it is, that they have great systems and they can see everybody around them. Hey, they're designed to step airplanes.
Yeah.
And it's not the case.
Not the case
That's
at
why
all.
they have AWACS up there with the military.
Yeah. Okay, anybody will have any questions?
Let me just, Roger, a couple areas.
We're
gonna be working on.
Never mind. No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, Dr. Kerber, yeah, he's,
I can wait.
Yeah. I don't know whether anybody else has this feeling, but these two discussions that we just heard, Bill, and I'm sorry, I don't know you, Lauren, have been the most important things that I've learned in the last 3 meetings. But I picked up on something that you said, and it's not a criticism of you, but it's about mental mechanisms, and either lethal mental mechanisms. And what was it you said? It could happen to any of us. And there's another one that we say about gear-up landings, for example. There are those who have and those who will. Right? Anybody heard that before? Right. So those are awful, awful ways to think. And they will get you into trouble and possibly even kill you. And let me use an analogy. How would you like to come into my operating room and have me see, well, it hadn't happened to me before, but I might kill you today. Or I make explosives. right? I've got this factory where I make explosives, and I say, well, you know, it hadn't happened yet, but it could happen. That's not the mental mechanism that we need to have right now. We need to think about another way to do it, and that is, it ain't going to happen to me because I follow my procedures, which they didn't, because they were above it all. And the truth is, we ain't above it all. We've got to follow our procedures. So don't use the bad mental mechanisms, it'll kill you.
Thank you, good words. I just want to relate what has taken place here. I'll give you an example. Checklists. I missed an item on my checklist one day because I was in a rush, and I went from the warm-up of my aircraft to the takeoff checklist, and I'm looking at 2800 as I'm going down the runway and going, what is wrong? And I abort, and I go back, and the aircraft had not flown for about 4 weeks, and the prop dome did not have any oil in it, so I was running 2800. And after I got back and I started reviewing my checklist, I'm going, oh yeah, prop control and prop operation. So we get in a rush sometimes and we do make mistakes. One of the things that came out today, and I mentioned here, I believe last month, and that is GA aircraft accidents are increasing this year and are way above last year's data. NTSB formed to address loss of control of crashes. And it states in here, let me just read the last paragraph, the forum will include, this is going to be in Washington, D.C., presentations from pilots, instructors, GA organizations such as AOPA and etc., the FAA and the aviation industry. According to the board, approaches to landing, maneuvering, and climb out are the most fatal type of loss of control accidents, many of them ending in a stall spin. Every GA pilot gets training in loss of control events such as aerodynamic stalls, Weaver said, yet about 40% of the GA fatal accidents involve loss of control. It is safety recommendations on loss of control. The NTSB emphasizes pilot training in topics precluding the pre-stall recognition, flight risk management, and currency of training. These are just some of the things that were brought up this evening that affects each and one of us, as Doc said, and we should be more cognizant of what we're doing. So just keep it in mind, some of the real important words, and we can't do anything better than what was said tonight. Just keep the background. We've had a good accident prevention program here in the Aero Club, and we hope it continues. Thank you.
I'd like to just respond to the doctor here. It's absolutely.
And you know, I was not criticizing you. You know that.
I don't know, and you bring up a good point. And I think just we're thinking on different planes here, and nothing to take away from what you're saying, because it's absolutely true. There's absolutely a science to the speaking, and I think what my sense is that everybody, all day long, we are operating on a code, and some of us are making a lot of mistakes, some of us are making fewer mistakes, but we are certainly making mistakes throughout the day, whatever we're doing, driving a vehicle, flying an airplane. And so I think what we're trying to do here is trying to, if, for lack of a better word, inoculate ourselves, to remind each other as the pilot community that, hey, we need to be on guard. We need to be inoculated that these things are real, that these things can happen if you are not careful. You know, there are going to be mistakes that are not big mistakes. They're not critical mistakes, but you have to not make too many of the big mistakes, or you will pay a heavy price. You will not be around. So as human beings, we're fallible, we're flawed. So we just have to continue to have this narrative, to have this conversation, to remind ourselves of what we're about and what operating system, like a computer, that we just continue to have to reboot everybody. Doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter how many times you've done it, you still need to be here, you still need to listen to stories, you still need to be reminded of what the right thing to do is. That's all.
Okay, this is exactly what I try to get out of this place, was this right here. And I finally got some response. Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, forgot your first name.
Lauren.
Yeah.
Hey, you.
And Doc, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to offer?
Hey, we can go all night, Doc.
Yeah, you can. You sure can. Provide anybody but those who want to leave at 8. Okay, we'll talk to the Aero Club manager, and then we'll go into knowing your SOPs thing, and then how not to hit a mountain. Okay, you have anything to say?
You want to go back to the last slide because it's misspelled?
No.
Quick review, T-34 Ground School on Saturday at 8 o'clock. And General Ball and Fred Zoltz will be running that program. It's open to anybody. So if you want a good review, due to the fact that we've had some issues with maintenance, we're hoping that we can solve some of that. And when I get back to work on Thursday, I'm trying to get a booklet put together with all of the engine performance for 5.7, since there was never any engine performance for that one engine. So I've gotten stuff from Continental Aircraft in regards to gas performance and fuel flows for certain power settings, and I'll try and pass that out. If not, I'll make sure that everybody that attends will get a copy of that. Other than that, I'm going to turn it back over to Roger because I'm on vacation.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I just threw that in there. That's a safety meeting briefing thing. This was left over from some other one. For those of you that, I know that there is some confusion about this, and I keep getting asked the question, if you miss a safety meeting, you do have to make it up. In order to how to make that up, this gentleman right here that's sitting there with his camera, is how you make it up. Eventually he gets it onto YouTube, and he also makes a DVD for it. DVD sits in the office, and you can walk in there and grab that thing, and you can watch it either on the standalone computer, the ones you check the airplane out on, or you can go in the back room, and there is a monitor back there, although they don't always work real well. I also have a little DVD player on my desk too, if you watch it, or any computer. Or you'd watch it on YouTube. If you watch it on YouTube at home or someplace outside the club, you do have to take a little 10-question quiz, because Air Force wants to see if you really did watch that safety meeting. So the quiz probably takes less than about 2-3 minutes, and if even that, and I check it, make sure that it, you know, I put on there 80%, but you know, really what it is just to make sure you have watched the YouTube, and did you get something out of it too. And then the other thing is that, of course, Air Force requires you to at least be attended to one safety meeting every 3 months. However, they don't like it if you miss a safety meeting. They just don't want to have you just not show up because you don't feel like it. You got to have a reason, really. That's what the Air Force says. But many of you guys can't make all the safety meetings because of schedules. I mean, some of the guys, you know, over here on the Predator, or, well, the 163rd can't get here because this is the time that they're out there flying the Reaper now, I guess. And so they just can't get here. Sometimes, every once in a great while, one of the F-16 pilots can get over here with his brick and get over here if he's on alert over here across the street. But most of the time, a lot of you guys can't make it. This is a reserve base. Unlike active duty, it's a little bit different. Here, you know, some of you guys live quite a ways, and it takes a lot of time to get here. And so we do have this provision where I can do a face-to-face, and I have authorized Bob and John Law to do face-to-face, which counts for an attended safety meeting. But you still have to watch the DVD. And then the whole idea is that then he's to answer you, or me, or whoever does it can answer your questions if there's any questions. Okay, any questions on this? Okay. All right, and this is a little something that we've been doing for several years, and we just go through the whole SOP paragraph by paragraph. And tonight we are just talking about inter-club flying. For some of you, I have actually had people ask me about this, and I have actually had done it. If you are going to be TDY someplace where there is a military aero club, you can fly there with an inter-agreement letter. And what you do is you request from me this letter, and it's just a modified version of the resignation letter that I give out. And I just put on there, you know, who to get a hold of, and email us through the Air Force Internet System. You're welcome to take your folder with you if you want to. Usually the aero clubs there, you know, they're still going to make you, of course, do a check, you know, in the airplane and make sure you know what you're doing. And sometimes they do reserve the right to charge you their dues. They can do that. But I've not seen it happen, I don't think. We have one individual that's in Yokota, or not Yokota, yeah, the other place, in Japan. And, yeah, Kadena, and he's flying for the club over there, but he belongs to us here. And so I recommend it, highly recommend it.
There's a way to stop your dues at this club if you're gonna go TDY for a long time and pay the dues there, right?
Well, you can do that, yeah.
Basically resign short.
Yeah, basically, yeah, it's a short resignation, yeah. And I just kind of put, and I hold your folder, and of course, you'll still always be in the computer, and then just come back. You know, if the other club is not, you know, most clubs are very cooperative with this, and they love doing it. And I'll tell you, if you do ever go TDY to Japan or any of those places, and you don't take advantage of them flying around in another country like that, then maybe you don't want to fly. I don't know. Today I talked to an individual about that, and I said, you know, when you go to Hickam, now there you don't have a club. You're going to have to go off base with an FBO. But I said, take advantage of, you know, going to an FBO there at Hickam and fly around the islands. You know, you're going to have to carry a whole bunch of life preservers and stuff, but because that's required.
There's a club at Honolulu.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a military club.
It's not a military.
Yeah, that's in. So we can't really capitulate with them, but. You know, if you feel that you're going to, I mean, you can take some of your flying records with you if we're doing that. Well, I know we've had a few people do it when we were, back in the old days when the 141 was still flying, you know, the good old days. Yeah. Anyhow, you guys probably don't even know what a 141 is, right?
It's too long ago.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Everybody knows what that airplane is. Okay. What? Okay, what we're going to talk about real quick tonight, and I'm glad that we talked about some of these other things because this is going to be real quick. Basically, we're going to talk about how to keep from hitting obstacles is what the whole idea is. I know that as a safety officer, I'll see things, and I know Bill does too, you know, especially in general aviation, of airplanes running into things, especially mountains. How many here are in the Civil Air Patrol? I know Carolyn is, yeah. Civil Air Patrol, of course, we see it quite often. A little bit less so now than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was quite common for us to get called out for an ELT where somebody's hit the side of a mountain someplace. Today, with the technology we've got and GPS and stuff, it's a little bit less than it used to be back then. Nowadays, it's mostly where the airplane did a hard landing and sets off the ELT because they land a little too hard. And then now our job ends up being trying to find that airplane and trying to get it shut off. But there's still airplanes that still run in the mountainside. And, you know, moving mountains with aircraft has never been proven to be successful, and just like the statement says, and the size of the hill is irrelevant. And FAA calls that controlled flight into terrain. There has been several different accidents that have taken place throughout the years, and including one of our 141s in Florida where they had a controlled flight right into the Everglades. Everybody should remember that one about, it was the L-1011. What airline was that? That was, I thought it was Eastern Airlines, I think it was, yeah. And it was just a little light that came on, and they were paying attention to that light, and somebody knocked the autopilot off. And the plane just very gently descended. You know, it was not, you know, any kind of, anybody could feel it. The next thing you know, they're hitting the ground at Malcolm.
They were trying to fix a light bulb that went out. I think it was one of the landing gear lights.
Yeah,
And they were
yeah,
looking around with that $1.50 thing and they completely lost it.
yeah, yeah. And it's sad, and I've seen, and I had friends up in Northern California that the guy I took off from Oakland, and nice airplane, you know, it was a 310, and beautiful airplane, but that was what the problem was. He took off from Oakland to my hometown, which is up in Mendocino County, and 3 o'clock in the morning. After flying all night from back east, refueled in Oakland, took off, and set the autopilot, and disappeared. And there's no radar up there, especially back then. There was no radar at all. And so nobody knew what happened to him. And somebody had the idea, oh, well, let's take a line, draw it to my hometown airport from Oakland, and then see what's up further. And they followed that line and right to a big mountain up there, and sure enough, there was the plane right on the side of the mountain. And he fell asleep, you know. So he flew all night across the United States and still had to make that one more little hop to try to get home. And that killed him. A lot of these accidents are caused by things like that. A lot of these things are because the pilot's flying below minimums. I dare say there's been several crashes that took place while I was flying in the 141 where an airplane went into the mountainside one time when we were coming through the pass. And the only reason why we knew about it was because ATC started, you know, they get a little hyper sometimes when something happens like that. And and it was a cloudy day. It was like today, only it was much worse. It was like it was this morning. How many got rained on this morning? Should be almost everybody, yeah. And it was kind of like that. And this guy was flying out there in this airplane, and he went right in the mountainsides up here, just above where Beaumont is, and Banning, I mean, and we happened to be flying when the plane, you know, and we could hear on the radio, and then I guess there was an ELT that went off too. But it's the minimums in everything that we do, they're there for a reason, and we all have charts. And you know, how many of you now have your charts on your iPad and on your, I know a lot of you do, yeah. So I mean, really, you know, there's some little things in there, very simple. You know, we don't have to get into it really super deep. This is just some more stuff here where people get caught up. Oil temperatures above normal, fuel gauge doesn't seem to be measuring, you know, just like what happened to the L-1011. Same thing. You're getting distracted. The GPS tells you where you are, but not necessarily the elevation. Okay, rerouting, clearing the confusion, wrote down the wrong altimeter settings. No. in our general aviation airplanes, in round dials, we could end up doing that. I think what the Garmin 1000, that sort of, you don't really have to still do that, do you? Or does it compensate for that?
I think it's automatic.
Yeah.
But you still have to take it.
In a glass
Insurance
cockpit. And you would know that too, but it's like,
Yeah, it's a GPS altitude.
yeah, it's, but in our airplanes, we don't have that type of stuff. So that's something that you gotta be a little more aware of, getting the wrong altimeters. And then, of course, general distractions. VFR chart fully covering everything in front of you. I've never done that, have you? And I'm lying to you right now. Right at the very beginning when I was flying, my instructor purposely let me open up my chart, and I had it like this, and I could feel that there was something wrong, and I could tell by the face of my instructor that there was something really wrong, and I go like this, and I was going like this. And I was heading towards mountains too. Now I wasn't anywhere near close to them enough, but I was heading towards the mountains. So, how do you minimize controlled flight into a mountainside or anything in the ground at all? Situation awareness. Can you read that down there, Ward? Okay. Yeah. Air Force really pushes situational awareness. And I know Bill could stand up and tell you some stories about that, and John also, since he was a C-130 guy. That's probably one of the most important things that you can talk about is situational awareness. Know what is going on. Do you think these guys in that G4 were situationally aware? I don't think so. Not at all. Man, I'm telling you, it is something that just, you can't minimize it at all. Charts. Here's an IFR chart. How many here are IFR qualified or certified? Okay, quite a few of you are, yeah. On these charts here, you've got these different numbers all across this chart up here. And each one means something. Now, how many do off-route obstruction clearance altitudes? Probably with GPS, the GPS kind of does that stuff for you, but we don't have that luxury here. There is an altitude, and you have to, it's up where that's, good. We got a good projector, because we used to have a projector that just showed certain colors, and we couldn't see half this stuff, but where that circle is. So, an off-route obstruction clearance, 3,500 feet is what that says right there. And what that says is that's altitude guarantees 1,000-foot obstacle clearance in a non-mountainous area. Now this is IFR flying, okay? This is non-mountainous area. So you can use it for night, and the visibility is reduced. You can, or at least should be, ensured that obstacle clearance. MEA, minimum en route altitude, okay? On this thing here, it's 6,000 feet. It's that, we used to have a little thing here, but I don't. Yeah, this right here. That right there is the minimum en route altitude. And what that does, it meets the obstacle clearance requirements and provides acceptable ground-based navigation signals. So in other words, you're supposed to be able to clear all obstacles as long as you're on that track.
Is that
right?
AGL or
That
MSL?
Victor. That is AGL. Yeah. So if you're at or above that altitude, you also should be able to get the navigation on that Victor airway right there.
Just want to make sure that's clarified. The 6,000 is 6,000 MSL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
600 MSL.
Yeah, sea level, yeah, MSL. the minimum obstruction clearance altitude, now that's a little different, okay? That's the one that's this one right here. See that? Okay. All right. Now, what is that one? What's the difference? Okay. Is the altitude is shown with a MOCA is the lowest altitude between the two fixes that meet obstacle clearance requirement. It only assures acceptable ground-based navigation signals within 22 miles though. So your MEA, you can actually get the navigation, but if you're at the minimum obstruction clearance altitude, it's only within 22 nautical miles. And that's of a VOR. Satellite-based navigation systems like GPS will still receive navigation signals no matter what, of course, and that's what we talked about before. This is all found on an IFR chart. And we'll get into the other couple of other ones too. Okay, maximum elevation figure. How many know what that is? You should know this, Carolyn.
I'm sorry,
This is a BFR chart here.
what is it?
Okay,
Yeah, the answer is the 2,500?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, 2,500 feet, okay? It's the highest elevation, including the terrain and other, vertical, like towers and stuff like that, that's bounded within the latitude and longitude lines, okay? Within that square, that's what that figure represents. So if you are above that, then you're supposed to be able to clear any obstacle that's within that. Now, understand though, it's a minimum. It will just get you by, okay? In other words, it could provide as little as 101 feet distance from that obstacle. And if you feel a little uncomfortable about that, then you may want to add some more altitude. This is one of the things that kind of bothers me about anybody that runs into anything, is that number up there is on all BFR charts. And if you just stay above it, you'll be fine. Now, obviously, of course, now you've got, you're trying to make an approach into an airport, you're trying to, do something like that. Now you can get yourself in trouble in that area too. But that's what this, just stay above that altitude. Any questions so far? Okay. Off-route obstacle clearance is 12,000 feet there, okay? Now what's the difference? This offers a 2,000 foot obstacle clearance. Okay, the difference on this is in the mountains, okay? Remember the other one was non-mountainous area. It gives you an insurance of 1,000 feet. This one in mountains will give you a clearance of 2,000 feet. Okay. Now that's on an IFR chart, instrument flying. It can be used at night. The only other altitude offered on the IFR chart is low altitude, segment, and MEA. This is all low altitude charts, incidentally. Okay. And of course, it would be, because a high altitude chart, you're up there. Although I suppose someday with our technology, somebody could build a 40,000 foot tower, I suppose. There is somebody out there thinking of trying to do that. How many know anything about the fact that they're even thinking about building towers up into space? To go reach the edge of space so that they launch things off that tower straight up and into space, so they don't have to use as much power.
Yeah, they just put in a patent for it.
Yeah, that's real. So, now the high altitude chart's not gonna. Now you're gonna have to really have all that on there too. Okay, let's see. The MEF in this area is 9,700 feet, 9,700 feet. Okay. It's the highest, of course, within the longitude and latitude, and let's see, this is the crowding next to 100-foot level. These altitudes are then adjusted upwards between 100 to 300 feet. Recognize this could give a pilot as little as 101 feet, which I mentioned before. Note that the highest peak on this VFR chart is 9,396 feet. That puts it pretty close to that 9,700 feet. I think this is that area, I think this is that airport. It's really located, it's got mountains right up on both sides. There was a C-130 that went into one of these, and I don't know if this was it or not, that went in. It was a very narrow valley, and they were trying to land in a very narrow valley with a runway like this. And something happened, and so they did a go-around and just went right and turned right and went right into a mountainside. And John could probably brief that one. So, any questions so far? Any additions? Anything to make things clearer? And of course, that's an approach plate. And those of you that fly IFR are very aware that you got to stay on glide slope and stay within, within that very narrow little tunnel that takes you down to the runway. And there, during the, it's amazing to me because I had a friend of mine who was a flight engineer on a TWA airline. It wasn't me that knew him. My best friend, it was his friend. He was the flight engineer on this TWA and it was going into Chicago. And they were doing an instrument approach. And the captain, they stayed centerline, of course, to get to the runway, but they did not observe the altitudes at all that was depicted on the chart. They just dropped the plane down. For some reason, that seemed to be the thing to do, even as late as just a few years ago. And anyhow, they plowed into the only mountain that was there between where they were at and O'Hare Airport. And of course, it killed everybody. This has happened a lot for some reason. I know here in Ontario, there was a 737 that was did the same thing. He was going in Ontario with, on the ILS, but I don't know why, he just drops down. I guess they think it's getting them there faster or something. I don't know what it is. And fortunately, the airplane didn't crash, but those guidelines that go across those big towers, electrical towers, the power lines, there's a guideline that goes across the top of them that helps so that when the wind blows, the towers are steadied that way with these things. The gear hit that line, and it broke it off and wrapped it around the landing gear. And so they had to land at LAX because they had a long enough runway there to take care of the emergency. And then the pilots were summarily fired after they got on the ground. So observe what the charts tell you, observe what your GPS tells you, although Bob can tell you right now we lost a CAP airplane because they plowed into the side of a mountain and they had the full Garmin 1000 in that airplane. And they were paying attention to something else instead of all the red that was showing up on the screens. And it killed both guys. And the thing that was really interesting about it was that one of the pilots used to be a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base.
54,000 hours between the two of them.
Between the two pilots, yeah, 54,000 hours between the two pilots. And yet they still flew that airplane into a mountainside with GPS glass cockpit. So, you're not exempt from it. When you're flying below these altitudes and you're not sure where you are and you're distracted, you're not acting as pilot in command, but as a passenger. The aircraft will continue on the path that was set. Stay pilot in command. Fly the airplane, fly the airplane, fly the airplane. And I should add in here situation awareness. Okay, any questions on this? I do have to cover one more item.
Can I add something to this?
Yes.
I love telling all those little war stories kind of thing.
Well, we love
one
hearing
of the
them.
benefits of being flying this many years is that you have all those kind of things in your pocket. Yeah, I was stationed in Panama flying C-27s down there. A good friend of mine, another pilot C-27s. We fly low levels down there all the time. Him and his wife took a weekend flight out to the islands out there, one of those commuter little airplanes. I don't know what do you call those things in Brazil or some other type like that. Single pilot certified. And when he got on the airplane, it's a single pilot, the Panamanian pilot. This guy fly that route, same thing from Panama over to the islands every single day, probably a couple times, and they'll go backwards and forwards. But it's uncontrolled airspace, so they go out there all the time. And my friend's on the airplane, he just talked to the guy, and the guy figured out this guy's an Air Force pilot, and he said, hey, just come up here and sit up here next to me. So, cool, I'll sit up here next to you, pilot seat. He's just a passenger flying with this guy. And as they're flying out there, and they're BSing and start descending, the guy started descending to the clouds. Well, my friend, like when we fly out there, locals do low levels. We know there's hills and stuff like that out there. And he goes, "What are you doing? You're uncontrolled. You can't fly in the clouds." Like we fly here all the time. I know where everything's at. I do this all the time. I said, "The hell you are! Not with me on the airplane. My wife out here. You can climb back up there. We'll go fly." He made the pilot. He's just a passenger. You climb back up and look for a hole out there somewhere, and then descend it. And it's all great. They tell a story. It's kind of funny. About 2 weeks later, we saw in the news. Yeah, you can see what I'm talking about. It's like the same airline, same airplane. We don't know if it's the same pilot or not. Flew into a hill, kill everybody on board. So, what would you have done if you would have been in the seat and you saw that and go, "Hey, this guy knows better. Do I say something?" Well, when you fly with a buddy in another Cessna out there, and this guy's doing this, well, this guy's got 10,000 hours more than I do. He must know what he's doing. Think about it. Speak up. If that makes you feel uncomfortable, speak up and say something about it. Make you do the right thing.
That was one of the things I really liked about the Air Force was that most all the pilots that I flew with, and even Bill, when I flew with him, he would, the briefing from the aircraft commander is if anybody sees anything that they feel uncomfortable about, speak up, and that's something that you just don't fool around with it. Yeah.
As everybody talks about, being brave or doing something that's uncomfortable. If you're not doing something uncomfortable like that, like what this guy did, I'm sure it was uncomfortable for him to say, "Hey, this is not good for, this is not working for me." But if at some point you're not saying something that's uncomfortable, and you're going to have the consequences. I know I have, said something to the pilot I'm flying with, or to, after that, if that's not working, you got to go to the next level. That's what we got to do. I mean, that is the tough thing, but that's the vanguard that you have to be in this business to be safe. And you got to accept those consequences, because it may not always, nobody's going to give you a medal. Nobody's going to, you're probably not going to get a medal. You may lose your job. It may cost you financially. It may cost you, a relationship with another pilot. And these are the tough things that they told us way back, when I started to fly. But it holds true. I mean, that's